the hard place. Like a wind from Goldland he sweeps by, blown far from his homeland in search of glory and honor. We walk in the garden of his turbulence.
Hello and welcome to Movie Joust. My name is Jesse Nussman, a film critic living here in Atlanta, Georgia. And with me on the other line, waiting for their robot dolls to arrive and the Amazon package on their front doorstep, it's fellow Atlanta film critics Jason Evans and Josh Sewell. What model did you guys get? What's the most important task that you want your robot doll to do?
I got the one that does dishes and irons.
Okay.
I got the one that performs, random solos. So.
Oh, okay. Wow. Good job for keeping it.
Wait. Hold on. Random solos? Wait, what?
Random musical numbers.
Okay. All right.
Yeah. So, guys, this week we have two number-themed movies coming out. Be sure to check out our other episode this week on F1, the Brad Pitt race car movie. But this episode, we are talking about Megan 2.0, or as I've been calling it, Methregan, because on the poster it's like M3 and then GAN 2.0. This is the sequel.
Jesse, I have to tell you.
Yeah.
I have to tell you, the first time you said Methregan to me, I was like, what's he talking about?
And then you looked at the poster and you're like, son of a bitch, he's right.
Wow.
It just feels like they shot themselves in the foot, because there's going to be a third one, and they just sort of marketed their way out of an excellent trilogy title.
It's why my biggest gripe of the last 10 years of movies is that the fourth Transformers movie wasn't called Trans and then the number 4 MERS. That was just they blew it.
Those movies are so awful. Oh my god.
But wouldn't it make it that much better if that's what it was called? You were like, at least the marketing department put some effort into this instead of Transformers, the Age of Dinosaur Apocalypse.
I still can't believe the last Fast movie didn't have fasten your seatbelt somewhere.
Oh, yeah, come on. Well, maybe the best place for us to start is, what were you guys' thoughts on the first Methregan, or Megan, as the normies call it, which was a kind of surprise hit Blumhouse movie from, was it 2 years ago?
03 or 23.
Okay, yeah. I gotta be honest, I did not see it in theaters and only watched it for the first time on an airplane in the last 3 months. So,
that makes sense.
Yeah.
Wait.
Perfect airplane movie.
Ditto. I saw it on an airplane. I saw it on an airplane back in April when I was flying to Japan. And
I watched it when I was flying to Greece in April as well.
So
crazy serendipity.
So did they even screen the first one for press? I can't remember, but I know I didn't see a press screening. My daughter, we joke all the time that, she's a teenager now, so she's too cool to go to screenings with dad, and that's one of the rare ones where she's like, hey, can you take me to see this? I was like, yeah, absolutely. So I think that was my first kind of inkling that this was going to be a bigger movie than I thought it was, and that it wasn't for me, and that's okay. Not everything has to be for me.
Well, wait, I'll say, we're talking about the first one still here, right?
Yeah.
Yes.
I haven't gotten lost. I thought the first one was pretty enjoyable.
Yeah.
It was sort of a mix. It's a little bit of sci-fi, a little bit of horror, a little bit of comedy, and I enjoyed mixing those genres all together. And look, it's not great art or anything, but I understood why people enjoyed it. I found it funny and amusing, and also occasionally scary. And the plot made sense more so than a lot of similar movies to that. So I was like, yeah, I'm on board. I like the first one.
And I think we're missing, Jason, me and you lived through different times where we didn't really get eased into horror movies. It was just here's Texas Chainsaw, And so I thought forever, I don't like horror movies. And it's no, I was just subjected to horror movies way too young. And it took me, so.
You just got the, throw the baby in the pool and say swim.
Right, exactly.
Horror movies.
So yeah, for me, the first Megan kind of works as baby's first horror, and I think that's great. It's sort of a safe way to introduce your kids to some movies that scare them a little bit, but isn't going to traumatize them or have them sleeping in your bed for a week.
Yeah, it's that smart marketing of like horror movies targeted for like 13-year-old girls.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And I don't mean that as like an insult. I mean that as someone who, I wasn't a girl, but as a 13-year-old who, what do you do when you're 13? It's like, well, let's go to the movies or something like that. And having a movie that is specifically targeted towards that audience. And I agree with you, Jason. While not thinking it's, it's a great movie by any stretch of the imagination, is sort of fun as one of those kind of like trashy, sort of knows what it is, Blumhouse, like January releases that, when I was on an airplane traveling the globe was like an easy way to kill like an hour and a half, and like became this sort of meme that I think also made it attractable to a younger audience.
I think that's the thing.
Yeah.
The dancing and like the creepy doll running down the hallway on all fours or running through the forest. Those are the things that sold the movie.
Yeah.
Not the concept, not the quality, not the critics' reviews. Those, like, people saw that stuff on TikTok and all the other social media platforms. They go, I want to see that.
Yeah, it's like the story itself is nothing original.
It's Robo
Killer Robot.
basically.
We've been here before.
Yeah.
Killer Robot's been around for a long time.
Yeah, I went back and looked at my review for that one, and I said the movie is just like, what if Chucky looked like Regina George from Mean Girls? And that's the movie.
So now we get a sequel that, because the first one was a big hit, has a bigger budget. It's got a more prime, like middle of the summer release date. I gotta be honest, I'm not really like offended by this movie, or really have any like, I'm not planning on taking my blowtorch out and like eviscerating it, while also kind of saying I didn't really like it, but also at the same time, it's probably not for me. It's more for folks like your daughter's age, Josh. I do think the one major distinction we should point out, I think this one is, which if the first one is more kind of building off the bones of like RoboCop, for example, I think this one is very clearly building off the bones of like Terminator 2, of like there's another evil cyborg or robot, whatever word you want to use, and then Megan, the killer robot from the first movie, needs to now become our best friend and help us defeat the even worse one. But this one is much more of like an action comedy as opposed to the first one, which I think was mixing more kind of horror and comedy.
Yeah. The biggest thing I would say about it that for people need to be prepared for is that the horror's gone.
Yeah, this is not a horror movie.
I don't think there's a single even remotely scary kind of moment in it, and it is all going for comedy. It's barely an action movie. This is mostly just a we're gonna have Megan, the AI, whatever, tell a ton of jokes while people are in peril. That's kind of her thing. You're about to die, but I'm going to tell you something funny right now.
Yeah.
And that's the whole
someone's
damn
about to
movie.
be impaled, and then like Megan will be like, "Yas, bitch," and like snap her fingers or something like that.
Yeah.
And which, it kind of, to go with Jesse's analogy, I think that tracks, because you go back and watch the first Terminator, it's a slasher movie, whereas T2 is pure sci-fi action, and that Megan's made that jump as well. I'm with you.
Although Megan isn't nearly as much action and nearly as interesting. No.
But I am with you. I don't think this kind of curious mix of ingredients works as well this time as it did the last time. I don't know if it's the power of surprise and low expectations. I'm wondering how much of this is that the screenwriter for the first one was Akilah Cooper, who also did James Wan's Malignant, which you either love or hate. I loved it.
A very fun, in my opinion, ridiculous horror movie that like leans into its ridiculousness. And
the OG Megan kind of had those vibes as well. She gets a story by credit here, but it looks like the screenplay was a solo effort from, I think it's Gerald Johnstone, who also is directing. And I feel like, the first time around, it feels like the camp stuff happened by accident. And you can't engineer camp. You can't plan for it ahead of time, and it feels like that's what he's trying to do.
Brilliant,
they are
Josh.
leaning into.
Yeah.
They are so much leaning into, so much trying to recreate the viral moments they had. Like, there's another scene where Megan dances for everybody in like her, halfway creepy, halfway cool kind of way. There are a couple scenes where Megan scampers around the floor, the ceiling, whatever else it may be. They're like, look, remember these things that everybody loved? Let's do them again.
But bigger and more expensive.
Yeah, except they're just not nearly as interesting this time around.
Yeah, I think that's a brilliant observation, Josh, of like the thing about camp is like you can't purposely engineer camp in a weird way. It's like that Met, when the Met Gala did camp a few years ago and everyone online was just arguing about what is camp. And
yeah, you don't know what camp is.
Right. And this has the feeling of sort of like, all right, we created this thing that became this unintentional campy online viral thing. And now can we turn it into a summer blockbuster? And I don't think it works as well. And it feels, it's that thing of like a movie trying like a little too hard, and maybe it's also me being a little bit more open to the like, horror comedy combination of like, oh, isn't this kind of ridiculous, and isn't like, the Megan as a creation is both sort of inspired while also kind of ridiculous looking because it's this sort of like ceramic head on like a real girl's body that's walking around and doing all these weird motions. But then once you turn it into like a CGI action blockbuster that needs to have all the quips and jokes that, make a summer blockbuster, that feels a little less inspired, and it doesn't feel like this sort of weird little fun thing that just sort of entered the movie sphere. It feels like something that is a bit more of a like corporate studio decision that like it feels more like it just sort of like evaporates into kind of feeling like a little bit same old.
Yeah, this really does feel like it was like noted to death a lot.
Well, look, my bottom line, and we can probably wrap up the conversation because I think all three of us feel the same about it. It's actively mid. It's not terrible. I laughed a few times.
I had fun with it. Yeah,
it's competently put together, I think, for the most part. I have some problems with the cast. A lot of the supporting cast, I think, they're just bad. They're not that interesting. I'm surprised with the success of the first one, they weren't able to bring in a little more money to maybe pay some better, more notable actors to take on some of these roles. But everything about it to me just feels kind of like mid. It's like yeah, fine. If you really want to see this movie, go see it. Cool. You won't be hugely disappointed, but don't go out of your way.
Yeah, I feel like, so that it's not a total, neg fest here. I will say the parts that I enjoyed were the parts where it feels like it sort of subverted my expectations a little bit. Like, there's a big build to get to Megan. Like, Megan doesn't show up for a long time, but the part of the movie that works for me is when you think you're gonna get Megan, this is like 20 minutes in, I don't think it's a spoiler, but like, while you're waiting for Megan, Allison Williams' character is still terrified of what Megan can do, so she puts her in this like tiny little robot with like an 80s style screen for the face. That was my favorite section of the movie, just because Megan hates being in that, and Allison Williams' character is clearly enjoying the fact that Megan hates being in this robot box. I enjoyed that. I also thought Allison Williams did a good job. It feels like she was one of the only actors who knew the kind of movie she was in.
I
wasn't
agree.
Winking,
Yeah,
she
I
think
also knew just how over the top to take it and still be, semi believable in the world of this movie.
Yeah, she I think really smartly, especially after Get Out, and I forget if Girls had ended around that time. I don't know if if Girls was like an important thing for you guys to watch, it being a very millennial coded show, but I think she has smartly leaned into her relationship to the character that she played in both that show, which is very kind of like self-assured and confident, but not necessarily like, but still kind of naive about the world around her, as well as the sort of like her character in Get Out, I think this is it. She's very smartly, I think, figured out like my brand as an actress is kind of an ironic, self-aware satire of like the quote unquote basic white woman, like basic millennial white woman. And it's
I can
it's
see
really
that, yeah.
funny, and I enjoy seeing it. And I think she is like perfectly in on the joke in this movie as well as the first one. I think the last thing I'll bring up that was, I think, kind of a misstep of this movie is trying to kind of say something about where we are at the moment with AI. And not to get us down a big digression, but I think this movie, in how sincerely it's trying to sort of wade into those waters, ends up tangling itself in a way where you kind of get to the end of it and you're like, I don't know that I quite agree with this movie's stance on AI, or you can't quite come down on like, is this trying to be a cautionary tale?
The movie's not. Hold on, the movie is not trying to comment on anything serious. It really isn't.
There's so much in this movie about like people trying to like, you know, lobby in Washington about what AI can and can't do, and like we can't get into the spoilers, but like there's spoiler stuff around like what the villains
that's
of
just
this
the
movie
most
want.
boring part of the film, though.
I know. I'm just saying, like, you don't have to like lean into those waters. Like, if you're not going to really interrogate that stuff in an intellectual way, like, I don't think now. I think if this was just like, there's a killer robot on the loose, you got to stop her. Like, if it was just that purely simple, I think this movie could have been the kind of pulpy fun it is. But I think in trying to be like, oh, can we also maybe say something about our current like anxieties about AI, I think the movie sort of trips over itself.
All right, I'm going to wrap us up here because I got a question for you guys.
Yeah.
Favorite killer robot movie? And if you want to take a second to think about it, my problem is mine's kind of a spoiler to say that it's a killer robot movie, but I go with Ex Machina.
I don't think that movie came out 10 years ago. That's not a spoiler.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Okay, good. I mean, like,
it's a film podcast. You know, like,
yeah.
we're gonna.
Yeah. Does RoboCop count?
I mean, sure.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I would say RoboCop is, I like, anytime I rewatch it, I'm like, this movie is so fun, and as well as like gnarly and funny, and is so much smarter. I think about like is so much more prescient about the world we live in than I think audiences realized in the 1980s when it came out. Just a like chef's kiss, masterpiece.
All right, Josh.
Well, I guess I'm gonna have to be the Allison Williams of our group and just go for the most basic thing. Like, I was trying to be like all sophisticated and be like, what about like Westworld or something like that? But
iRobot.
It's Arnold. It's OG Terminator. That's I think, you know.
I mean, pretty great
you
movie.
Can't top it. It's a classic
Yeah.
for a reason. You know?
Yeah.
Well, wait, hold on. Do you like Terminator or Terminator 2 better? I think I like Terminator 2 better.
See, and I guess I know most people think that. I think I still like the OG Terminator better. It was, you know.
You know, it's
when
funny you
Cameron
bring that up,
keeps it
Josh.
Simple, I like it before he starts building up the mythology like he's doing with Avatar. Like, when he just tells a singular, simple story, I think that's Pete Cameron.
Except Aliens is better than Alien. There's another hot take for you.
I disagree. I'm an OG Alien guy.
That's
like
always
them
a
both.
hard
They're
one
both
for.
really good.
That's a hard one for me to answer, but Josh liking Terminator 1 more than Terminator 2, I guess this theory doesn't really work because Jason said he also likes 2 more than 1, but I have noticed there is like a funny generational thing, which I think like which one was like more present on like television when you were growing up. Like I think for people like your age, Josh, I've heard that a lot of people saying like, I actually prefer the first Terminator to the second one, whereas people my age and like a few years older than me, like my brothers and stuff, I think it's 2, because 2 is the one that was just sort of like, I mean, he topped it, and this is the one that's like on TV all the time and is like the pinnacle of that series. So that's an interesting observation.
Yeah, I just like how grimy the first one is. It feels like one of those, because it was one of those movies you found on a shelf somewhere in a video store before Cameron was Cameron, you know?
Yeah.
And it just feels like kind of grimy, like it's not something you're supposed to be watching, you know? Whereas Terminator 2 is great, obviously, but it's got that really big Hollywood sheen on it, you know?
Yeah.
I just think the liquid metal.
It's super cool.
when he walks through the jail cell bars and his gun gets stuck and he has to turn it and bring it through. I saw that in theaters and I like fell out of my chair. I was like, this is just so smart, so clever, so amazing that I was like, I'm all in on that.
And
Table
without
for
Terminator
big
2, you don't get that killer Wayne's World joke.
Oh. Table for when we do a big gym pod later this year
There you go.
for Avatar 3. Well, guys, this has been fun talking about killer robots. Be sure to check out our other video where we talk about F1, hashtag vroom vroom. And next week, hashtag dinosaurs, we'll be talking about Jurassic World, Jurassic Park, Jurassic ScarJo, whatever it's called.
It's Jurassic World Redemption or Reborn or Rebirth,
yeah.
something like that.
All
I
right.
wonder if something goes wrong and the dinosaurs get out.
I
No.
think it's gonna go great this time. I think
I think they're already. I think they're already out. I
Yeah.
think that's the
Yeah.
the plot here.